Hello, today I'm going to talk about Cubism and futurism and how they interact, and it's going to be fun. So, there are two types of Cubism. Here they are. Now we're going to be talking about structural Cubism, which is where you take an object and simplify it so much so that you only get the basic shapes and forms and contours and lines and patterns and textures to explain what it is that you are depicting within the image. So, Pablo Picasso's guitar, you can see how instead of playing with light and shape and texture, he simply plays with the forms themselves. So you know by the blue rectangle and the circle in the centre that this is an elongated form, and you can tell by the slight bump on the one side and the woodwork texture that this is a guitar. The musical notes actually help with this because we interpret the note, we interpret the woodwork, and we interpret this shape with the circle in the middle as a guitar. This is very important because it shows that we are registering these forms and these shapes and these contours and these lines and these textures, and then we are registering in our brains, this is wood, this is sheet music, this is a circle, this is a rectangle. All together in our mind we put these pieces together and we get guitar, because from our basic knowledge of what a guitar looks like, we recognise it, much like when we recognise people within a children's drawing. It is not an accurate representation, but it's still accurate enough for us to know that is what is trying to be depicted within the image. Now, when we contrast this with futurism, futurism can be so basic and so outside of the box that we do not understand the concepts within it. So, if we take this, now this is this guy's black square, and it is literally just a black square. When you take it out of the context of the room that it was placed in by the artist in the exhibition, it is just a black square. There is nothing more to it. Now when you look at what the artist was saying about this black square, what he was trying to recite to us, it is completely irrelevant to the black square itself. The black square does in no way help us to understand it. It is not a good representation, it is not a good illustration of what he was saying. You can read below some of the quotes from the artist and how he speaks about this piece, and I really don't like it, and I don't like what he was trying to say, because I feel like he just sort of detaches himself from it. Now in many ways he wanted to outstep the boundaries and the restrictions which we put on art, like colour and light and representational value, and simply be. There are lots of links and things to adequate descriptions below, but basically he wanted to take away the representational value of things like colour and shape and simply have them be, just as things. Now I disagree with this, because when you take the representational value away from a colour, away from an object, you simply have colour and object, and the only thing that you are putting across to your potential audience is defiance. And so in no way was he helping us to move forwards within art. If anything, he was creating such a structural boundary for himself that the only thing he could make in the future is this. Have I proved my point? So when you contrast this with Picasso's work, they seem very similar. His work, structural, very little to it, very little colour, very little shape or form, but with Picasso's work you still identify the colours, the forms and the shapes. You still identify with the image. With the futurist work you just don't. You can't identify with it because you can't emote. You can't identify with it because you cannot break out of the boundaries that he has set. Now the black square is meant to represent everything that is above us. It's meant to represent the heavens above and the breaking out and the extension of thought. But I feel like by putting such a dark, such a deceptive colour within such obvious boundaries, that you have essentially cut yourself off from any extensionist thoughts whatsoever. And I feel like Picasso created something wonderful with simple forms, shapes, structures, and a really, really simplified idea, structuralism in Cubism. And the futurist movement broke those boundaries down and set their own boundaries, which were so restrictive that all they could do was play with ideas that they'd already looked at. Now, if you move forward to fairly modern ideas, like this guy's work, which is also below, you see that he's actually trying to create this existentialist space, that he looks at filling entire rooms with one colour so that you are immersed in it. And I love this idea because it is immersive. It's not restrictive like the set square. It is immersive and it's wonderful and it's passionate and it just consumes you. And it does what the futurists were trying to do, but 10 times better. So that's what I have to say about Cubism and Futurism and those two things coming together. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you disagree with me or agree with me, please comment below because I'd love to hear what you have to say.